Hello, my name is Nadia Petrova. This isn't the story I thought I'd be telling. When I first landed at JFK, I thought I was touching the sky. Below me, New York burned like a constellation built by human hands. I pressed my forehead to the glass, my reflection trembling over the lights. For a second, I believed I belonged up there with the dreamers, the ones who made it out. Boston was colder, quieter. My scholarship covered tuition and my visa covered time. I had a dorm room, a shared kitchen, and a heart that beat like a clock wound too tight. I took photos of everything, the library steps, steam rising from manholes, my reflection in skyscraper glass, proof that I had escaped. Classes, part-time work, midnight study sessions, it all fits. My life was predictable, and in predictability I found peace. I was building something solid. I believed America made sense if you followed its rules. Then came the letter. It arrived on a gray morning, folded neatly, official seal like a bruise. Scholarship suspended, 2 words that erased my future. I ran to the international office, shaking, the paper wet in my hands. The woman behind the desk smiled the way people do when they've given this speech 100 times. You have 60 days, Ms. Petrova, to secure sponsorship or return home. 60 days. Outside, snow drifted across the quad. The air smelled like iron. I stood there reading the same line again and again until the words lost meaning. I applied everywhere, wrote emails to professors who had once said, "If you ever need help." None replied. My savings thinned. My mother called every night. I told her I was fine. She believed me. Day 40, day 50, day 58. I packed my things in silence. My roommate's laughter echoed from the hall. The city outside my window looked distant, already forgetting me. That night I fell asleep clutching my passport like it could still protect me. The morning my visa expired, I didn't leave. I told myself I'd fix it. A week, maybe 2, I'd find a way. But once you cross that invisible line, once you become no one, there's no going back. I took a bus to New York. The skyline rose like a promise and a warning all at once. Queens smelled like fried food and rain. I found a room with peeling paint and a window that didn't shut all the way. My roommate, Leticia, worked nights at a diner. We didn't ask questions. We shared cheap coffee in silence. I worked wherever cash was king. Cleaning offices, folding laundry, washing dishes in basements where clocks had no hands. Sometimes walking home, I felt like the city was taking notes on me. A man is watching too long at the crosswalk, footsteps that echoed half a beat behind mine. Once, outside the subway, a car idled until I disappeared from view. I told myself it was nothing. It usually was. One afternoon, the nail salon where I'd been cleaning closed suddenly. Tax investigation, someone said, but the owner's sister never came back after that. No one mentioned her again. That night, Leticia looked at me across the tiny kitchen table. "The city eats people like us," she said. Then she laughed. It didn't sound like laughter. I started walking with my head down, speaking less, existing smaller. I didn't notice my reflection anymore. Maybe it stopped following me. Money ran out faster than courage. Every siren outside made my heart stop. Every letter in the mailbox felt like a trap. And then I saw it. A flyer at the bodega. Faded paper, thumbtacked beside lottery tickets. Dancers wanted. No experience necessary. Cash nightly. Discretion guaranteed. Someone had written the number by hand, red ink smudged, memorized it. I didn't want to, but I did. That night, the wind rattled the fire escape like coins in a jar. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, repeating the number until it stopped sounding real. By morning, I'd made up my mind. The woman who answered sounded bored. "Bring heels," she said. "Black dress, no ID." The address led to a door between 2 dumpsters. No sign, no name. Inside, heat, perfume, bass. The air shimmered with smoke pretense. The man who interviewed me had silver hair and a voice like oil. "You're not from here," he said. I shook my head. "Student?" "Not anymore." He smiled. "Good, then you'll fit right in." That night, I became Luna. The stage was round, wrapped in a light color of blood. Music thumped low and steady, like another heartbeat beneath mine. Faces blurred in the dark. Money glinted. The first time I stepped under the lights, I felt my old life burn away. I told myself it was temporary, a few weeks, just until I could pay for a lawyer. But weeks melted into months. I learned which men tipped well and which hands not to take. I learned how to move with confidence and breathe like smoke. I sent a little money home. My mother said she was proud. I couldn't tell her that pride was the most expensive lie I'd ever bought. After a while, I stopped counting days. Time existed only between songs. Then he appeared. A man in a dark coat sitting in the back corner. First night, he didn't drink, didn't smile, just watched. Second night, same seat, same stare. When our eyes met, something inside me shifted. He nodded once like he already knew me. I finished my shift early. The hallway outside smelled like cleaning fluid and cheap perfume. I could feel him watching even after I left. The city was slick with rain. I walked fast, clutching my coat close, heels slipping on the pavement. A car slowed beside me, headlights flared, then vanished. At home, I double-locked the door. I stared at the mirror above the sink, but it didn't feel like my reflection anymore, just a stranger wearing my fear. The next evening, he was there again. Same seat, same silence. When I walked by, he smiled. "Good night, Luna," he said. He said it softly, like a secret he wasn't supposed to know. That was the moment I realized the dream was over. Not with a letter or a phone call, but with someone saying my name like a possession. I thought I'd come here chasing opportunity, but opportunity had teeth. And somewhere in that glittering sit-something hing had started watching me back. The man in the corner didn't come back for a week. For 7 nights, I convinced myself I'd imagined him. The city plays tricks on tired minds, faces blur and sounds echo. But each time the door opened at the velvet room, I caught myself glancing toward the shadows, waiting. He returned on the 8th night, same coat, same seat. This time when our eyes met, he smiled, small, polite, too calm. He raised his glass slightly, like a toast, and I froze. After my shift, the manager found me in the dressing room, staring at the mirror. "You've got a fan," he said, lighting a cigarette. "Good for business." His smile didn't reach his eyes. He left a thick envelope on the counter. "He booked a private room for you tomorrow." I told him I didn't do private rooms. He exhaled smoke. "You do now." That night, I didn't sleep. The hum of the refrigerator in our apartment became a low, metallic growl. The city outside buzzed like static. When I finally drifted off, I dreamt of eyes behind glass, watching, waiting, unblinking. The private room was small, mirrored, and claustrophobic. Music pulsed faintly through the walls. The air smelled of cologne and expensive secrets. He was already there when I entered. "Hello, Nadia," he said. It was like being slapped without being touched. I hadn't heard my real name in months. I forced a laugh. "You've got the wrong girl." He smiled. "Do I?" His eyes were gray, not the dull kind, but sharp like cold steel. He took a folded card from his pocket and slid it across the table. A business card, plain white, no name, just a number. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. "You're out of time." The music outside grew louder. Bass thumped like a heartbeat I couldn't control. "Who are you?" I whispered. He leaned back, untouched by my panic. "Someone who could help you or ruin you." Before I could speak again, he stood, tucked the card back into my hand, and left. After that night, the velvet room changed. The red lights felt hotter, the shadows heavier. Every sound behind me, a footstep, a door hinge, a whisper, made my stomach twist. I started checking the exi, memorizing the faces of the bouncers, watching the watchers, like Itsenoto. "You're working too much," she said one morning as we shared burnt toast. "You don't blink anymore." I wanted to tell her everything, the man, the name, the card, but the words felt cursed. Speaking them would make them real. Instead, I smiled. "I'm fine." That was the first lie I told her. 2 weeks later, I saw him again, not in the club, but on the street. Broad daylight, midtown traffic. I was buying groceries, cash only, when I caught his reflection in the window behind me. Same coat, same stillness, watching. I dropped the apples I was holding. When I turned, he was gone. I told myself it was a coincidence. I told myself a lot of things that month. But then strange things began happening. One night, after my shift, I came home to find the front door of our apartment slightly open. Inside, nothing was missing except a single photo from my nightstand, my mother and I. I told Leticia maybe the wind had blown it, though the window was shut. The next evening, a letter waited under my door. No return address. Inside, my own immigration file photocopied. Visa dates, passport photo, and scholarship record. Every line of it. My hands shook so badly that I nearly tore them apart. Someone had access to me, to everything. That night I took the subway to the Brooklyn Bridge, stood in the cold wind, and nearly threw the file into the water, but something stopped me, a thought I couldn't shake. Maybe he's not after me, maybe he wants something from me. The next time he came to the Velvet Room, I didn't wait for him to speak. I met his gaze through the mirror. "What do you want?" I said. He smiled faintly. "I told you to help." "Help with what?" "Information." He slid an envelope onto the counter. Inside, photos, grainy shots of me recognized from the club, regulars. Some of them had whispered things they shouldn't. Others had paid in cash, too thick to be clean. "These men move money," he said, "across borders, same way you do, but for different reasons. I don't move money." He smiled again. "Not yet." My pulse pounded in my ears. "I'm not one of you," I said. He leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "No, Nadia, you're better, 'cause no one suspects you." He stood, dropped a card on the table, and walked out. The card had a number, the same as before, only now on the back, one new line was written in pen. "They're watching you too." For days, I carried that card everywhere. In my pocket, in my shoe. I couldn't throw it away. I couldn't call it either. Leticia caught me staring at it "What's that?" "Nothing." "Then why are you afraid of it?" I had no answer. The club began to feel like a trap. The air is thicker, the lights dimmer. I started noticing men in suits at the bar who never touched their drinks. A bouncer I'd known for months suddenly stopped showing up. They said he quit, no one believed it. One night, after closing, I found a small USB drive taped under my locker mirror. No note, just plastic and metal waiting. I held it under the light. My reflection stared back, eyes wide, unblinking. For a long time, I didn't move, then I pocketed it and walked out into the rain. The city never sleeps, but that night, it felt like it was holding its breath. I took the long way home, every shadow stretching longer than it should. Every passing car slowed. My heart beat too loudly. When I reached my building, the hallway lights flickered once and went out. Only the sound of dripping pipes and my own breath. I stood there, frozen, until a voice came from the darkness. "Hello again, Nadia." My blood turned to ice. The man stepped forward, calm, expressionless. He didn't look like a stranger anymore. He looked like inevitability. He glanced at my pocket, where the USB drive pressed against the fabric. "Careful," he said. "Once you open it, there's no going back." Then he turned and disappeared down the stairwell, footsteps echoing until they didn't. I stood there for a long time, trembling in the dark, the city humming faintly through the walls. My name was no longer safe. My job was no longer just survival. And I realized for the first time since I arrived in America, I wasn't hiding anymore. I was being hunted. Rain slicked the pavement outside my apartment like oil. By the time I locked the door behind me, the USB felt like a live wire in my pocket, humming against my leg, begging to be opened. I turned off the lights, closed every curtain, and sat on the floor with my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. One keystroke and maybe I'd find answers. Or disappear for good. The screen blinked. No connection detected. That was good. I didn't want to be connected. I inserted the USB. For a moment, nothing. Then a folder appeared. No name, no date, just a black icon pulsing faintly. Inside, video files, dozens of them. Each was labeled only by timestamps. I clicked the first one, the Velvet Room. Camera angle from the ceiling, private room 3. A dancer in red, me sitting across from a man in a gray suit. I watched myself laugh, shake my head, and lean forward. Then the man's face came into view. Not the watcher, someone else, a regular. He handed me a folded envelope. I remembered that night he said it was for the performance. But in the video, after I left, he opened the envelope again. Inside, not cash, a flash drive. Another flash drive. He slipped it under the table, where a gloved hand reached out from the shadows to take it. The camera zoomed slightly. Whoever had edited had wanted me to see that hand. I skipped through more files, different nights, different rooms, different men. Same pattern. Exchanging envelopes, small drives and handoffs. Always the same unseen figure collecting them. And in half the clips, the watcher was present, always in the corner, always observing. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a strip club, it was a front. Money, data, bodies, all being moved through a single stage. And I was standing in the middle of it. I shut the laptop so fast it nearly cracked. My pulse thundered in my ears. Outside, thunder echoed, too close. Then came the knock. 3 times. Slow, deliberate. I froze. Who is it? No answer. The peephole showed nothing but rain and shadow. The 4th knock came harder. I backed away, reaching for my phone, but the screen was black. Dead, no signal. Then, a voice iced through the door. Calm, familiar. Open it, Nadia. My blood went cold. The watcher. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The door handle turned once. Stopped. Then silence. I waited 10 seconds, 20 before grabbing my bag and the laptop. If he knew where I lived, I couldn't stay. By the time I reached the subway, the city had become a blur of lights and rain. I bought a ticket to nowhere, just movement. I needed to think. The USB was still in my pocket, pressing against me like a heartbeat. Every instinct screamed to throw it away, but something deeper said, "You're part of this now." At the next stop, a figure stepped into the car. Dark coat, head tilted slightly my way. I turned my face to the window, heart racing. He didn't move closer, just stood there, hands in pockets, watching. 2 stops later, I bolted. I ran up the stairs, through the turnstiles, into the night. My shoes splashed through puddles, sirens echoing somewhere distant. By the time I reached Queens, I had memorized every face behind me. None followed, but the fear did. Down I went to Letizia. She opened the door in her robe, eyes wide. Jesus, what happened? I looked half mad, soaked, shaking, wild-eyed. I told her everything. Not all of it, but enough. The watcher, the video files, the men. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said softly, "You can't go to the police." "Why not?" She took a breath. Because half the girls who tried vanished. The word hung in the air like smoke. Vanished? Managers say they left. Some say ICE took them, but no one knows. My stomach turned. "What is this place, Leticia?" She hesitated. Then, "Not what it looks like. We're not the product, we're the delivery system." That night, I met her outside the club. After hours, she led me through a back alley into a service entrance behind the neon facade. Down a stairwell, past locked rooms, past the smell of bleach and fear. At the bottom, a metal door. Behind it, a small office lit by a single lamp, computers, hard drives, cameras. "The velvet room isn't about dancing," she whispered. "It's about information. The men pay to feel safe while secrets change hands." She pointed at a wall of monitors. Every private room, every dancer, every customer, everything recorded. "And the watcher?" I asked. Her voice dropped. "Not one man, a group. They run the network. They use people like us to move data across borders through gifts, through tips, through flash drives." I stared at the screens, my reflection fractured across a dozen feeds. "How do you know all this?" She hesitated. "Because I used to help them." I turned. "You?" I didn't have a choice. They said they'd fix my papers. They didn't. The silence stretched. Then she grabbed my arm. "Nadia, you have to leave tonight." But I didn't get the chance. A sudden clatter, footsteps upstairs, then voices, male, angry. Leticia's eyes went wide. They found us. She pushed a back door open. "Run!" I ran. Down another hallway, up a narrow stairwell that smelled of smoke, the sound of boots behind me. Someone shouted my name. I burst out onto the street, rain slashing down, neon bleeding into puddles. I didn't stop running until I reached the bridge, the same one I'd stood on weeks ago when I thought I'd lost everything. Now I knew what everything really meant. The wind roared around me. The city lights shimmered on the water below. I pulled out the USB. If what I'd seen was real, if I could get this to someone who believed me, maybe I had a chance. But as I looked down at it, I noticed something I hadn't before. A tiny engraving on the metal edge. The same number as the watcher's card. I laughed. Short, bitter, breathless. It wasn't his warning, it was his invitation. Behind me, a car door slammed. I turned. The watcher stood under the bridge lights, coat soaked, face calm. He raised a hand, not threatening, almost gentle. "You weren't supposed to see that," he said. Then why give it to me? He smiled faintly. Because you were never just a dancer. The wind howled. The bridge trembled. My grip tightened on the USB. For a heartbeat, the world balanced. Silence, storm, heartbeat. Then, a single gunshot cracked through the rain. Glass shattered, lights flickered, and Nadia Petrova disappeared into the dark. When I woke up, everything smelled like bleach. White light, white ceiling, white noise humming through a cracked speaker. For a moment, I thought I was dead, some sterile version of purgatory. Then pain found me, a knife twisted under my ribs every time I breathed. A voice floated through the haze. She's awake. I turned my head, but the room spun. A woman in scrubs hovered near the foot of the bed, clipboard in hand. Her badge read Elmhurst Medicine Center. Easy, she said softly. You've been through a lot. My throat felt like sandpaper. What happened? She hesitated. You were found near the bridge, gunshot wound. You're lucky to be alive. Lucky. That word didn't fit. I looked down, my arm was bandaged, IV lines snaking from my wrist. The gown smelled of disinfectant and fear. Then I noticed the second bed in the room, empty, sheets too neat, a shadow under the curtain. And the door, closed but not locked. Somewhere down the hall, a radio crackled. Immigration hold, room 12. My blood ran cold. Room 12. That was me. They didn't call me Nadia Petrova anymore. The chart read Jane Doe, female, Eastern European, mid-20s. I was evidence, not a person. Through the half-open blinds, I saw two men in suits standing by the nurse's station, talking low, scanning files. One of them wore an ice badge clipped to his belt. I tried to sit up, but pain ripped through me like lightning. A nurse rushed in. You shouldn't move. Where's my bag? I rasped. Confiscated. My ID? Police took it. I swallowed hard. Did they find anything else? She gave me a strange look. Like what? I almost said it, the USB, but I stopped myself. If they had it, I'd already be gone. That night, I pretended to sleep while the guards changed shifts. Around 3 a.m., the hallway fell quiet, only the sound of rain against glass. I pulled the IV from my arm. The sting barely registered. There were clothes in the supply CL, set, scrubs, sneakers, and a nurse's jacket. I moved like someone else's shadow, light on my feet, heart hammering. Down the stairwell, past flickering lights, past the smell of coffee and chemicals. When I reached the back door, I froze. A man in a suit stood there, umbrella in hand, waiting. He wasn't one of the ICE agents, too calm, too still. When our eyes met, he smiled. The watcher. I turned and bolted. He didn't chase me. He didn't have to. By morning, he'd find me again. I made it as far as the 7 train before I collapsed onto a bench. My side burned, blood seeping through the bandage. The pain was real enough to remind me I was alive. But alive meant hunted. I needed to disappear. I found a payphone in a corner store off Roosevelt Avenue, one of the few that still worked. My hands shook and dialed the only number I remembered, Leticia's. Voicemail. Leticia, it's me. I'm out. Don't come to the club. They know. Please. The line went dead. I turned to see the shop owner watching me too closely. His radio murmured a headline. Unidentified Eastern European woman found wounded near the Brooklyn Bridge. Authorities investigating suspected trafficking ring. My throat tightened. Unidentified. They'd erased me already. For the next few days, I lived in motion. Subways, shelters, fluff houses that smelled of mold and despair. I worked under borrowed names, cleaning kitchens, folding sheets, serving coffee. Every time a door opened behind me, I flinched. I checked newspapers for any sign of the velvet room of the raid of Leticia. Nothing. It was like we'd never existed. But one night as I wiped tables at a diner near the river, a man came in wearing a gray coat. He sat at the counter, ordered black coffee, and left a folded napkin beside the tip jar. I waited until he left before opening it. Inside, a small key and a single line written in blue ink, Locker 417, Port Authority. I stared at it until the letters blurred. Part of me wanted to burn it. The other part, the survivor, knew better. I went the next morning blending into the rush hour crowd. The terminal smelled of diesel and rain-soaked coats. Locker 417 was old, rusted, and dented at the corners. The key turned easily. Inside, a plain manila envelope. No names, no markings. I opened it slowly. Passports. 2 of them. One with my face, but a new name, Elena Kovacs. A bus ticket to Chicago. And a phone, prepaid, battery taped to the back. At the bottom, a folded photo. Letizia, alive. She stood beside a man I didn't recognize. Same watcher's coat, same calm stare. On the back, written in the same blue ink. We're not done. I sat there on the cold floor, surrounded by strangers rushing past, and realized something brutal. I hadn't escaped. They'd moved me. Every time I ran, they opened another door. Every time I hid, they handed me a new name. It wasn't freedom, it was containment. The gunshot, the hospital, the new passport, all of it, part of the cover-up. Someone wanted Nadia Petrova dead on paper, so Elena Kovacs could live in her place. But for what? That question stayed with me as I boarded the bus that night, the city lights fading behind me. I kept my hand on the phone, waiting for it to ring. It never did. Just before dawn, I powered it on. The screen flickered once, then a single message appeared. Welcome to your second life. Then, static. I stared out the window as the highway stretched endlessly ahead of me. In the reflection, my face looked older, sharper, harder. Nadia was gone. But whoever came next, she wasn't running anymore. She was going to find out who had pulled the trigger that night and why they'd let her live. Because somewhere between the gunshot and the hospital bed, the rules had changed. Now, the hunted was learning how to hunt back. The bus rolled into Chicago before dawn. Steam rose from the street grates, and the air smelled of metal and rain. I stepped off with a fake name, a stitched-up scar, and one plan: stop running. The prepaid phone buzzed once when I turned it on, a new message: storage 18B, Union Station, noon. I almost laughed. Different city, same game. But this time I wasn't their pawn. The locker held a thin laptop and a slip of paper with 2 words: proof ready. When I powered it up, a live feed appeared, surveillance footage from the Velvet Room, date stamped the week after the raid. Girls dancing, men drinking, the watch was her moving through the crowd like a ghost. The place hadn't been shut down, it had been renamed. I scrolled deeper. Files, spreadsheets, money routes, client codes, offshore transfers. Everything the USB had hinted at, multiplied by 100. Whoever sent this wanted me to finish what they couldn't. At the bottom of the folder sat one more video, time-coded 20 minutes earlier. Letizia. She sat in a small room speaking to someone off camera. Her voice trembled. She's alive, she'll come for you. Then a hand reached into a fragrant gray sleeve, a gold watch. The watcher. He looked at the lens. At me. Of course she will. I shut the laptop and leaned back against the locker, heart pounding. It was all here, enough to burn them. But I couldn't just upload it. If I went online, they'd trace me before the page finished loading. I needed someone who could clean, someone outside the system. 2 days later, I found him Malik, a freelance journalist I'd served coffee to in Queens months before everything collapsed. He did recognize me at first. The haircut, the fake glasses, the new accent. When I told him my name, his jaw went slack. I saw the report. He said, they said you died. Almost, I said, I need your help to make that lie permanent. He stared at the drive in my hand. What's on it? Everything. We met that night in a cheap motel near O'Hare. The walls buzzed with electricity. The neon outside bled red through the blinds. I laid the files on the bed. Money laundering, trafficking, surveillance logs. He whistled low. Realize what this means? Yes, I said. It means they don't get to bury us. While he built the encryption pipeline, I watched the street from the window. Every passing car made my stomach tighten. Every shadow looked like the coat from under the bridge. By dawn, Malik hit enter. The files were less dispersed across mirrored servers, timed for public release within 24 hours. All we had to do was stay alive one more day. They came at sunrise. A knock, polite, deliberate, just like before. Then the door splintered inward. Malik yelled, grab the laptop. I pulled him toward the fire escape. Gunfire shredded the curtains. We hit the alley running. Cars roared. Sirens wailed somewhere close, but not for us. We ducked into an abandoned warehouse 2 blocks over, breath ragged. He looked at me, eyes wide. How did they? They never lost me, I said. They let me lead them here. I checked the phone. A new message blinked. Turn yourself in, we'll make you disappear again. I typed back with shaking fingers. No more disappearing. Then I smashed the phone against the wall. The rest was noise and waiting. We watched the clock crawl past noon. Outside, the city kept moving. People going to work, buying coffee, living in the illusion of safety. Inside, we listened to the rain hit the tin roof until Malik's laptop chimed. Upload complete. The files were out. Too many servers, too many copies. They couldn't erase it now. Within an hour, phones across the city would light up. Journalists, investigators, activists, all reading names that were never supposed to exist. We left the warehouse just as unmarked cars screeched to a halt at the front. We slipped through a side door into the alley, blending into traffic like ghosts. By evening, every news channel carried the same headline. International Data Trafficking Network exposed, multiple arrests in New York and DC. The Velvet Room. The managers, even the so-called watcher. His mugshot flashed across the screen for 2 seconds, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked almost human. I didn't celebrate. I didn't cry. I just sat on a bench by Lake Michigan, the city lights trembling on the water, and breathed without fear for the first time in years. Malik handed me a coffee. What now? I smiled faintly. Now I live the life they killed. He laughed. And the name? Elena Kovacs will do, I said. Nadia Petrova can rest. We watched dawn creep over the skyline, slow and cold and real. Somewhere behind us, sirens wailed again, but this time they weren't for me. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the hostel where I'd been staying. No return address, just a single line inside. Freedom always has a watcher. I burned it without opening the window. The smoke curled upward, disappearing into the morning light. For a long time, I thought about the bridge, the gunshot, the faces that haunted every dream. Then I thought about the sound of the lake and the way my breath no longer trembled when I said my name. Hello, my name is Elena Kovacs, and I survived the American dream. 6 months later, I live in a small town near the border. No neon, no cameras, no velvet lights. I teach English at a community center, mostly to women who still speak in whispers like I used to. They come with bruised accents, trembling hands, and fake names written on napkins. I tell them stories about hope, never about ghosts. Sometimes, when the sun sets and the radio fades, I still catch a flicker of static, a faint echo of a voice saying my name, the old way, Nadia. I tell myself it's just a memory, the city leaking through the cracks of peace. But once, while locking up the center, I saw a man across the street, gray coat, gold watch. He smiled, almost kindly, before vanishing into the crowd. I didn't follow. I just turned off the lights and walked home, repeating my name like a prayer I finally believed. Elena, Elena, Elena. And somewhere behind me, the quiet kept watching.